Blaming sinful acts for low birth rates, a religious militant group overtakes America to form the Republic of Gilead. June Osborne is forced to become a handmaid named Offred, where she's tasked to bear a child for Commander Fred Waterford and his wife Serena. When her neighbor Offglen reveals herself as part of a rebel network, June sees hope in finding her daughter, who was also captured. However, Offglen is suddenly replaced by a new handmaid. June learns from Rita, the Waterford's maid called Martha, that the officers known as the Eyes took the previous Offglen last night. June didn't even learn her real name. One morning, she walks with the new Offglen, worried that she's loyal to Gilead. She recalls how Gilead's military killed the Congress, blamed radicals, and suspended the Constitution, but everyone's ignored it. Now, she chooses to be more vigilant. June recalls ordering drinks at a cafe, but her card was declined due to insufficient funds. She asked to try it again, but the barista told her to return when she had money. When Moira defended her friend, the barista spouted misogynistic remarks at them. Before things escalated, June urged Moira to leave. While June was at work, their boss apologetically announced that all the women were fired because of a new law. With no choice, all women left the building with their items. Outside, armed men lined up on the streets as it was the beginning of Gilead's takeover. At present, June returns home, and Rita insists that she rest. The Martha enthusiastically presents her meal, which includes dessert, something the handmaids aren't supposed to have. Rita explains that since June hasn't asked for napkins this month, they're hopeful that she's pregnant. Just then, Serena walks in, wondering if she's had pregnancy symptoms, but June says no. She then invites her to visit the Putnam's new daughter, Angela, who was born to another handmaid named Janine or Offwarren. June has no choice but to agree. Later, Serena offers June to hold the baby. The other wives grow concerned, but Serena assures them that her handmaid has experience with babies. June looks at Angela fondly, but another wife quickly takes the child from her. The Putnam wife, Naomi, arrives and complains how after Angela had breakfast, she tried to take her, but Janine bit her. Because of this, she looks forward to having Angela weaned so her handmaid can leave. Hearing this troubles June. When she visits the other handmaid's room, Janine beams about her baby. However, June warns her that she'd get punished for biting Naomi, but the latter defends that she was still feeding the baby when Naomi grabbed her. Suddenly, Janine reveals that her commander, Warren, is in love with her, and they will run away together. June is doubtful about this, but Janine is convinced that she'll have a real family with Warren and their baby. Later, Serena asks June how Janine is. She notes that she's okay, but she might be losing touch with reality. The wife comments on how it happens to weak girls since what they do is difficult. Still, Serena claims that she's blessed to have June. Hearing Angela cry, Serena decides to stay and help Naomi. So June rides the car alone with her driver, Nick. Boldly, she asks if he knew that Offglen was taken since he warned June that she was dangerous. Nick just reminds her that they can't change anything. As they reach the Waterford house, June sees a black van in the driveway. Nick advises her to tell them everything. Staring at the Eyes, June remembers when they learned how Gilead froze all women's bank accounts. Moira explained that a new law stated that women couldn't own property, so the bank would likely transfer June's money to her husband. She pointed out how they did everything in one day to trap them from leaving the country. June was still in disbelief, but Moira argued that they'd been under martial law since the so-called terrorist attacks. June's husband, Luke, arrived, assuring the women that this couldn't last. He promised to take care of his wife, but Moira scoffed, ranting how men liked to take care of women because they were weak. At present, June prays to avoid being hanged, bargaining to let Gilead use her body so she can live. Suddenly, Aunt Lydia electrocutes her with a kettle prod as she and an eye officer named Burke interrogates her. Burke asks about the previous Offglen, wondering what if they head straight home after shopping. June claims that they would sometimes stop at the wall to pray. Burke asks if they walk by the river, and she confirms because it's pretty there. She adds that it's also private. When asked what they talk about, June says that they talk about shopping and the weather. Lydia then comments that Offglen is beautiful, and June agrees. The woman wonders what makes her attractive, so June stammers that she's just pretty overall. Just then, Burke asks if Offglen ever touched her. June shakes her head, but when Lydia asks if she knew Offglen was a gender traitor, she admits that she did because the handmaid mentioned her wife. Lydia asks why she didn't report it, so June says that she didn't think about doing so. Burke reveals that Offglen had a relationship with a Martha, which June didn't know about. She insists that she only knew that she was gay, and Lydia electrocutes her for using the word. Burke wonders again why she didn't report Offglen, and June says she was her friend. Hearing this, Lydia points the cattle prod at her face, reminding her about their sculpture. With a smile, June defiantly recites how those who suffer for righteousness earn their place in heaven. Seeing this as rudeness, Lydia slams the prod across her face and electrocutes her. Suddenly, Serena rushes in and covers June, insisting that her handmaid is pregnant. This makes Lydia back away and Serena orders them to leave. Elsewhere, the previous Ofglin awaits her trial. Hoping to escape, she tries to tempt the guard, but he shoves her. As soon as she's taken into court, she and the Martha she had a relationship with are charged with gender treachery. Without allowing them to give their testimony, the judge sentenced the Martha to execution. However, since Ofglin is fertile, she is sentenced to redemption. With that, the two are taken into a van. During the drive, the women tearfully hold each other's hands, weeping until they arrive at their destination. The eyes quickly drag the Martha out and hang her, while Ofglin cries as the van drives away. That night, Nick visits June to give her a bag of ice for her bruise. He admits that he wishes he just drove away with her earlier. He then lingers close to her before leaving. After he leaves, however, June spills the ice, refusing his sympathy. The next morning, June discovers that she's not pregnant. She thinks about attending the rally against the rising Gilead with Moira. Hundreds protested against the New Republic, but when the riot squad arrived with heavy weapons, June pulled her friend away. Still, a few people yelled at the army, so they opened fire, forcing everyone to flee. At present, June finds Nick and Serena tidying up a room to turn it into a nursery. Before June can speak, Serena admits that it was hard to keep faith as they've been trying for so long. She calls June her miracle and kisses her hand. Finally, June reveals that she's not pregnant, and the smile disappears from Serena's face. Suddenly, she drags the handmaid back into her bedroom and orders her not to leave. She then warns June that things can get worse for her before shutting the door. The woman can only sob on the floor. Elsewhere, Ofglin wakes up on a hospital bed, discovering that they've operated on her. Lydia arrives, calling her by her real name, Emily. She assures her that she can still have children and it'll be easier now since she can't take satisfaction in the act anymore. Realizing what it means, Emily screams in rage. 13 days later, June recalls happier times with Luke and their daughter, Hannah. She pulls herself out of the thought, fearing that she'll be trapped in her memories. She hasn't left her room in days despite her door being unlocked. At best, she can open her window slightly to feel the air outside. Desperate, June explores her room thinking there are secrets to uncover. She checks the closet but ends up lying down inside. Because of this, she finds Latin words carved into the wall where no one else would see. She wonders if the previous Offred wrote it. June remembers when Moira pried a metal piece from a toilet tank in the red center, where they were trained to be handmaids. She sharpened the piece, but June reminded her that they were about to leave the place to be posted. However, Moira thought being posted would be worse. June then heard her carving a message on the stall, so she warned her that writing was punishable. Still, Moira thought it was worth it since her message would remind the next girl who attended the training that she wasn't alone. June thinks of this idea, so she thinks whoever wrote the words in her closet. Meanwhile, Fred mentions to his wife how an aunt, those who trained the handmaids, crossed the border and gave an interview in Canada. He calls the woman's claims as lies, and Serena advises him to discredit her. Fred then shuts his laptop off and tells his wife not to worry since they have men working on it. Rita goes to June's room to give her food but sees her on the floor, making her spill the meal. June apologizes for scaring her, explaining that she just passed out. Rita later explains to the Waterfords that June fainted. She asks if she should schedule a doctor's appointment, but Serena declines. When Rita reminds her that they have the ceremony tonight, Serena finally agrees. Learning that she's heading to the doctor's office, June excitedly gets dressed and she can finally walk outside. However, Serena tells her that she'll be using the car, disappointing her. Still, June relishes the rain on her way to the car. When she gets inside, however, her windows are covered, and Serena even closes the privacy window behind the driver, isolating the handmaid. Before the handmaids left the Red Center, Lydia trained them for the ceremony. The aunts called it a sacred ritual where the handmaid laid between the wife's legs, so they become one flower to be seated. This horrified the others as they realized what it meant. Moira asked if they'll mate with the husbands in their wives' presence. In response, Lydia reminded them about the story in the book of Genesis, how Rachel asked her handmaid, Bilhah, to bear children for her husband since she couldn't. Since this was God's word, they will abide. At present, June visits the doctor's office, where she laid on the bed with a sheet between her torso and the doctor. Despite not seeing each other's faces, the doctor casually asks about her symptoms. He asks if the Waterfords are treating her well, and she answers yes. Knowing that she's lying, the doctor urges her to talk to him. He can't really help her, but promises that he's a good listener. Still, June doesn't talk, so he just inspects her reproductive health. He confirms that she's healthy, but comments that Fred is probably sterile since many of the commanders are. June is surprised since calling a man sterile was forbidden because only women can be barren in Gilead. Suddenly, the doctor locks the door and claims that he can help her, noting that if Fred can't get her pregnant, she'll be blamed for it. He then peeks over the curtain, revealing his face as he assures her that it'll only take a few minutes. Nervous, June says it's too dangerous, so the doctor leaves. The event frightens June, so she tearfully thinks of memories of Hannah on the ride back home. She then slams the privacy window of the car, unleashing her anger as Nick focuses on driving. Finally, they arrive home, and Nick shares his sympathy. When June dares him to say what he can do about it, Nick just offers to help her exit the car. Inside the house, June tells Serena that she was dehydrated. She then apologizes for failing her and begs to be let outside. However, Serena just orders her to return to her room. With that, she goes to her room and lays down in the closet, wondering how the previous Offred survived living with Serena. Desperate for any form of hope, she recalls when she and Moira took Aunt Elizabeth hostage in the Red Center. While Moira held the sharpened metal piece over her throat, they took Elizabeth to the boiler room. Having taken her cattle prod, June threatened the aunt to exchange clothes with Moira. She then tied her to a pipe while Moira wore the aunt's clothes. Moira threatened to torment Elizabeth as they treated them, but asserted that she won't, so the aunt should remember that. With Moira dressed as an aunt, she could command the guards, thus escaping with June. At present, June kneels in the sitting room for the ceremony, and Fred joins her. However, she's supposed to arrive after his wife. He then reveals that he wanted to say hello since he's been away. Fred wonders if they can have a rematch of Scrabble tonight, which he invited her to play weeks ago. Scared and confused, June doesn't respond. Finally, the others arrive, and the ceremony continues. However, when Fred needs to enter her, he struggles to start, leaving his handmaid and wife waiting. After several attempts, Fred leaves. Serena finds him in the bathroom, still struggling to get started. She kneels, offering to help him, but Fred declines and leaves. Defeated, Serena checks on her handmaid and orders her to go to her room. As she heads upstairs, June knows she'll still be blamed for this since he tried to talk to her, but she didn't respond. Scared, she hides in the closet. After escaping the Red Center, Moira and June were lost. The city had changed significantly, and eyes were everywhere, so they blended with the crowd. They passed by the wall where the traitors were hanged, bodies were taken away, and books and artworks were burned. The two headed to the subway but couldn't figure out which train to get onto. Moira left June to ask for directions, but another guard approached the handmaid and asked for her ID card. The train arrived, and Moira realized that June was about to get caught. Conflicted, she turned to the open train, and June tearfully nodded, allowing her to escape without her. As Moira boarded the train to escape, her friend was taken away. Thinking how her friend wouldn't have stopped fighting, June forces herself to get up and head to the commander's office. While playing Scrabble, June asks about his trip, and he rambles about his stressful work. She offers to let him win, but he insists on a fair fight. When they disagree on a word, Fred asks her to get the dictionary. As she does, she finds a Latin dictionary on his shelf, making her wonder about the message in the closet. She asks if he knows Latin, to which he says yes. As they continue playing, she wonders if the previous Offred was also invited to these game nights, and if she did something to displease the commander. Wondering how the previous Offred was punished, she recalls her own punishment for escaping the Red Center. She was strapped to a bed while Linda accused her of ingratitude for the opportunity they'd provided her. She claimed that June was an adulterer since her husband had a first wife, and Gilead didn't acknowledge divorces. Linda claimed that God still made June useful, so she should be thankful. June begged for forgiveness, but Linda insisted that her actions still required consequences. With that, Elizabeth arrived and whipped her feet. Taking a chance, June asks Fred to translate the Latin words she read, though she doesn't share where she read them. He chuckles since it translates to, "Don't let the awful men grind you down." Fred deduces that the previous Offred wrote it somewhere, so he reveals that she hanged herself after finding her life unbearable. June wonders if he wants her life to be bearable, and Fred agrees. Hearing this, June mentions being isolated in her room. Though she knows that Serena is teaching her a lesson, she implies that she's starting to give up. Because of this, Fred convinces Serena to free June, allowing her to step outside the following day. As she relishes her victory, she recalls how the other handmaids in the Red Center discreetly gave her pieces of their meal when she was still bedridden from her punishment. This act and her predecessor's words give her hope that the handmaids are still united.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.